It can sometimes feel like every company has a camera on the market, big ones, small ones, and everything in between. But when Insta360 brought the Go3 out in 2023, it was one I skipped. Even when they brought out the Insta360 Go3s in June 2024, I still wasn't taken in. Well, that was until I changed my mind. And yes, that can happen. And in 2024, I bought the DJI Pocket 3, and that has become invaluable. Then came the Insta360 X4, and that has also become a part of my storytelling for this channel and for TV work. So why on earth did I get the Insta360 Go3s? Surely I have enough cameras by now? Well, in this video I'll explore why I decided to jump in and get this camera, and if it lives up to expectations. Welcome to the channel, and a big thank you to all those who've recently subscribed as we got over the 1,000 mark just a few weeks ago. We might not get any awards for it, but hopefully it means you like what I'm doing here, so I guess onwards and upwards. But what you're really here for is a look at the Insta360 Go3s, and initially, as I say, I wasn't going to get this, but I found myself needing extra footage for this channel and giving you a glimpse of my work life and how I do shoots. So if you combine this with the Pocket 3, the Insta360 X4, and all the other cameras I have, then you get an idea of what TV shoots are like for me. And let's face it, it's hard to tell the story of day-to-day life without showing you visually what's going on, because if you haven't shot any of the behind the scenes, then where's the proof? And if you consider when I'm working, I'm there for the client, so either the BBC or something commercial. It's virtually impossible for me to dedicate any time to these videos when I have a job to do, as earning a living is too important to mess up. So that's where cameras like the Go3s come into play, and in theory I can stick it to my chest or my cap and then crack on with my job without thinking about BTS footage. So how did that idea go? Well, before we get into some examples, let's just have a quick look at the camera. It weighs in at 1.4 ounces or 39 grams, shoots 4K, although I'll discuss that a little bit later. 1080p up to 60 frames per second, slow motion in 1080p up to 200 frames a second, although I've not used that feature just yet. Takes photos and all the usual bits and bobs, and Insta360 claim 140 minutes of battery life. However, you'll only get 30 minutes of record time with the tiny camera before you have to charge it again at the base. And like all cameras in this category, it has things like stabilization. I think at this point we all know the drill. It's a tiny camera and you can put it anywhere and get different angles and perspectives. So this is the camera, and the form factor is very similar to other action cameras like the GoPro or DJI Action series. But of course it's much more than that, and you can detach it from its pod, which is the main feature. So in the box you get the camera and its base, which is also called the action pod, the magnetic pendant which you use to attach your camera to your chest, the easy clip which I use on my cap, the pivot stand and pivot base, and it also comes with a screw-on lens guard. So because you have so many accessories with it, I bought this handy case from Amazon, so at least I know I won't lose any bits over time, and with equipment this small, that's easily done. So let's get on to the settings I use, because let's just say there's a little story to tell. Now, as you know, this camera is tiny, and it does have many of the settings of, say, mirrorless cameras. You can set the frame rate, the shutter speeds, and the exposure. And for the majority of my cameras, I use manual settings, even for something like the DJI Pocket 3. So the settings for the Pocket 3 are 4K 25 frames a second, 1/50 shutter speed, and I usually use the variable ISO between 50 and 800. And when you need to control things like bright light, I use ND filters. So I first wanted to test out how easy it would be to do the same with a camera like this. And as it turns out, it's not easy at all. Mainly because there's no way to change the settings on the fly. Of course, the camera is so small, but when you're wearing it, you have no screen. So as you can see with these driving shots, and for full disclosure, I am driving the car whilst concentrating on the road and not the camera, but the slight change in weather conditions mean our image is overexposed, and that's a problem. Now with a camera like the Pocket 3, you can easily change the settings or add an ND filter, mainly because you're in a position to do so. However, with the Go3s, that's pretty impossible. So after a pit stop at the services, it was a change of settings to full auto and we hit the road again. And as you can see, the picture looks perfectly fine and exposed properly. So for me, this is lesson learned. And if I'm ever on a shoot, I'll be honest, I'm probably not going to have time to be dialing in my settings with this camera. Now, I have seen many people on YouTube discuss the use of ND filters, and given my use cases, NDs are probably not going to be for me. It's okay for this camera to be fully auto, and I can honestly say I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Now, in my previous video looking at the DJI Mic 2, I took the Go3s to Goodison Park as I watched my team Everton draw 1-1 with Fulham in the Premier League. I put the camera on my chest and I walked to meet my mate Mike and got shots entering the ground, and then attached it to my cap later for point of view shots during the game. I just wished it would have been more of a spectacle. But as you can see, the shots hold up fairly well, although we did have a few shaky shots whilst walking across the concourse. So what do I take from that? Well, in low light, the sensor will struggle, but for the ease of use and the images I've got so far, well, I'm more than happy. Let's face it, is it going to be Hollywood quality? But then again, would I expect it to be? So onto a BBC shoot, and I took the camera with me as we were filming with boxers at a press conference in Liverpool. So I attached it to my chest and I got a few shots of me setting up with extra bits on the X4. Then once set up, I continued shooting during the interviews as I was using the Pocket 3 as well, just in case it was needed back in the studio in Salford. But I can say in full auto mode, it passed the test, and it can give you a perspective you'd ordinarily not see. I also did a similar shoot for BBC News over Halloween. The A-cam was the Sony a7S III, and I got a few extra shots with the Pocket 3, which were used in the final feature. Now, you may only have this camera on screen for a few seconds, but I'd argue the shots are worth it for storytelling purposes. And again, in fading light for a commercial shoot, you can get some BTS shots. So despite a few flaws in the image quality, which I'll go into shortly, overall, I'm pleased with the Go3s. But one thing you will have noticed is that these examples so far have been from a behind the scenes perspective, nothing really editorial so far. But that was until I did a shoot at Everton's training ground for the BBC, and they were doing a feature with Blues midfielder Dwight McNeil. The shoot was done in two parts. Part one, a standard shoot outside, walking and talking, and then the next in a gaming van, as Dwight is a big online gamer. But of course, this caused a number of issues. First up, it was a question of how to set up this interview in a dark, confined space, and also capture the scenario of Dwight and former boxer Tony Bellew playing games during the interview. So I decided on this. First, a two-shot with the Sony a7S III, a single ISO of Dwight on the a7 IV, a reverse of the screens on the Sony ZV-1, a wider perspective on the Insta360 X4, another wide on the Pocket 3, and the final piece of the jigsaw, a gaming controller shot with the Go3s. So in essence, all angles were covered, and as you can see, having the extra shot of the controller gives you something you'd ordinarily not have. And yes, it's not going to be on the screen for too long, but it did certainly come in handy in the edit, as it was used 3 or 4 times and only for a few seconds at each time, but often that's all you need. And in what could have been a curveball ended up being an interesting shoot, but it was just a pity that Everton didn't win a few days later. Now, having seen a number of videos on YouTube before and since getting the Go3s, it's taught me a few things. And even though the picture quality is good for a camera of its size, I would say the claim of it being 4K is a bit of a reach. Yes, technically it probably is, and maybe I'm being spoiled with the quality of the DJI Pocket 3. That camera blew me away, by the way, and the images are just top notch. But this camera falls short of what I would say is a true 4K image. But I guess with that to one side, I'm fairly pleased with the results. And as you can see, it's come in handy on a number of shoots. And the fact I was able to offer it to the BBC for the Dwight McNeil shoot shows how versatile something like this can be. And yes, it is tiny, but I'd want a bit more from a 4K picture. But maybe I'm being too picky, but there's still plenty of room for improvement here in future versions of the Go series. So the Insta360 Go3s, and I don't know how they come up with these names by the way, has proven to be a useful, if not perfect, piece of kit. Yes, it has flaws, but you can probably counter that with its size. The 4K doesn't match my expectations, and like all small cameras, low light is an issue. But for me, this isn't going to be an A cam, it's really something of an extra, an indulgence if you will, and it's something I will continue to use. But only you can decide whether it's something you would find useful. It certainly isn't going to rival something like the Pocket 3 or the Insta360 X4, although it is something that can supplement those cameras. And it doesn't really replace something like a GoPro or a DJI Action. Don't really look at it as the same deal, despite its form factor being similar when docked with its base module. The Insta360 Go3s is a useful piece of kit, and it can certainly add, I suppose, a layer of storytelling. And if you said to me it was also an indulgence, well then I couldn't disagree either. It just depends on which side of the fence you sit on. But I will certainly look closely at future versions of this, and its form factor certainly has potential to grow in future years.